here. Video's recording. And let's hit record almost here. Hold on. Almostest. For some reason. Okay, there we go. All right. That's CurrentGeek. Episode 1209.
I have current leaks.
Current leaks.
Ha.
All right, here we go, everybody. Tighten up your belt and get ready for the fun because it begins in 3, 2, 1.
I have
Current Geek. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oh, that didn't work. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Current Geek. This is Current Geek, episode 208. And welcome back to our autopilot edition of the show. For some reason, that killed the music altogether, so we're just going to fix that. Okay. Jeez, I don't know what happened there.
And we're not. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's the autopilot edition of the show. A chance for us to watch the pilot episode of a TV show and geek out about it. I'm Scott Johnson.
I know
He's
what's
Tom
happening.
Merritt.
It's time travel.
Whoa.
We've been pulled through a wormhole.
Oh, no. Well, not technically time travel, right? Or do we know that yet? I don't actually know.
I just made that up. You're right.
All right.
There's no time travel necessarily. It's just a wormhole. We got pulled through a wormhole.
All right. Well, the show is...
We got pulled far away to a new landscape.
Farscape, we should call it. Farscape. That is what we're going to call it. Lots of puppets, bunch of actors, good makeup. It's a show. It's a thing I was really into when it aired, but I'm surprised how much I forgot about the pilot. And also, I forgot about who was missing in the pilot. There's a lot of stuff that happens kind of right after this pilot. We'll get to all of that in a second. But it's the classic sci-fi adventure known as Farscape. Farscape. Actually, it's a little bit of, we've done, we did Buck Rogers before. And there's a little of that in here, right? Guy from a normal century.
Right.
Doing his astronaut business, gets flung to somewhere crazy. In his case, I think it was time travel.
Yeah, in the original Buck Rogers, he was just in a rocket, but I think in the 80s one, wasn't he in a space shuttle-like thing?
Yes, it was like a shuttle, small shuttle ship type unit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I looked around to see if I could find anybody that would admit that, oh, yeah, our chief inspiration was like Buck Rogers or something like it, and I couldn't find it.
Well, no, because Rockne O'Bannon, who was the creator of this show, probably was afraid of getting sued. So you won't see anybody admit that. But let's give the vital statistics here.
Please.
Farscape premiered maybe a little more recently than you remember. I always think of it as a 90s show, but it premiered on March 19th, 1999.
Whoa.
So it was only in the 90s for a very short period of time. Also, if you're in the U.S. and you think of it as a U.S. show, it wasn't. It was an Australian show on 9 Network Australia, although it also showed on the Sci-Fi Channel in the U.S., YTV Canada, and BBC Two UK. And by the end of its run, I think it was primarily identified as a sci-fi show, mostly because sci-fi canceling is what ended Farscape. It was conceived in the early 90s by Rockne S. O'Bannon and Brian Henson under the title Space Chase. And this pilot episode was written by Rockne S. O'Bannon and directed by Andrew Prowse.
You may be familiar with Brian Henson, son of Jim Henson.
And maybe that's why we see some Henson Muppets in the Farscape.
Yes, and throughout the series, it's one of the hallmarks of the thing is a bunch of puppets. I will say this. I think the puppetry in this pilot is strong still. It gets even better as the series goes on. They get better at it. It feels more integrated. It feels less like you're watching a puppet and more like you're seeing organic creatures, I guess. Not that it really makes a giant difference in the pilot, because I think the pilot is still pretty delightful and fun in its own right. My biggest complaint
it doesn't quite have the smooth edges. This is very much feels like a pilot. Like you said, not all the characters that we come to know and love. Gigi Edgley is not in here yet. And things are a little bit, I remembered it actually being a lot slower moving. This watch, I was like, oh no, I guess everything's, moves along at a pretty good pace. But the last time I watched this, which was years and years ago, I felt like it would just took a long time to get anywhere for some reason. But maybe that's because I'm remembering the later episodes.
Well, this one definitely jumps right to the action early and quick. And I also forgot that. I thought there was more. I thought we were on Earth for a lot longer. and the lead up to
Yeah,
the
we're
taking
barely
off.
on Earth,
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's like
to your Buck
seconds.
Rogers analogy, it's like, hey, aren't you nervous?
Yeah.
Sure am nervous, Dad. Give me your lucky thing so I can show it later and be all wistful. Okay, bye. I'm going off in my rocket now.
Yeah, they didn't really waste any time on the planet, and they got out of there, and then they were right into it, and I won't say it's jarring, but it must have been for some viewers, especially when the credits rolled, because up to that point it felt kind of traditional. He's in a weird looking little mini space shuttle thing. It's kind of just all NASA looking. Not a problem. We haven't gotten real weird yet or anything. He gets stuck on that ship, or they suck him in. They introduce themselves. There's kind of a little bit of, all right, well, who are these weird creatures, and who's that blue lady, and who's that angry Worf-like alien? And then they jump to the credits, and the opening credits are insane. They're insane. Like, they're just overload visual, crazy looking design, like an insane amount of visual overload. And that's when I went, oh, right, that's the tone of the show. And that's what it becomes very quickly. Like, it gets real weird real quick. And I like that.
Yeah, and I think that's why maybe when I went back and watched that premiere episode so long ago, I felt like it was slow, because it doesn't other than the credits, it is a pretty traditional sci-fi show, except that it's got a Muppet and a robot in it, right? Like, otherwise, like, okay, like you say, Buck Rogers start, and then he meets a couple aliens and have to introduce a way for us to understand each other because we all speak other languages. Oh, okay, you got an injection, great. We're being pursued by an evil because he thinks you killed his brother. Let's try to steal some stuff. Oh wait, we got caught. Like, there's no beats in this pilot episode that are surprising. You know what's going to happen at every point, pretty much.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the bad guy for a second, and the chief conflict, which is our main character supposedly kills his brother. Here's my biggest problem with that, and it was kind of my problem then, and I think I still have the problem now. He's very angry about this and wants to devote all of the resources of the organization called the Peacekeepers, which is this very malevolent, omnipresent, universe controlling sort of empire.
Yeah, keeping order.
Keeping order, exactly.
Can't have chaos.
And bad ponytails. They're keeping those alive. Those are good. But he's so mad.
The piece. I always thought it was PEASE, but it's PIECE, the piece of hair hanging off the back of your head.
Right. There you go. Now good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
I totally understand it now.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, he's mad, and I get it, and I would be mad, too, if somebody killed my brother. However, they have this multi-angle video proof that they keep looking at themselves that shows it 100% was an accident. There's no way there was no action taken by our main character to do anything.
And his aide points that out. It's like, that pretty much looks like an accident, boss. And he's like, screw it, I'm mad and I'm going to stay mad. So it's definitely not a logical, you're supposed to accept it as an emotional reaction, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to assume that this guy is so mad at his brother being destroyed that he doesn't care if it was nobody's fault, because you can't argue that the crash is what killed his brother, right? If that ship had not appeared, his brother wouldn't be dead.
Right.
You could certainly say, like, well, it's not his fault. He didn't, do an aggressive maneuver or anything. It's just an accident. But I think you could stretch that to say, a lot of people are angry about things that are accidents, and refuse to forgive people, even though they know it's an accident, because they're just upset about it.
I would tack on to that. It'd be one thing if the ship appeared in the way, in the space that other ship was in right then. But it wasn't. It was there. Other ships went around it, and this one dumb guy clipped its wing.
Well, again, that even just makes you more angry if you're the brother of, like, I don't want to admit how stupid my brother was at flying, so I'm going to project all this anger at you.
Yeah, that's a good point. My memory is, and correct me if I'm wrong, chat room, because it has been a while. Like I said, I'd forgotten a lot of stuff, but I think that's the arc of this season only. I don't think this whole brother died thing is the long-term.
No, because there become other reasons to go after everybody. It's not just the escaped prisoner thing anymore either.
Right.
Down the road.
I also don't like how the pilot seems a little empty on that ship. It's a gigantic living ship, but there's like four people in it or something, 4 entities. And my memory of that show is that it's crowded all the time. And
Well, we get more characters later,
yeah,
but not that many, I guess.
yeah. And I don't know if that's a thing I'm going to notice later, or if I'm conflating with Babylon 5, which was always full of people walking everywhere.
Yeah, or Deep Space Nine too.
Sure, that whole era of science fiction was definitely a little more crowded. That's a weird way of thinking of it, but they kind of all were, except this one. So here's another one of those, Tom, where I'm going to just keep going. You got me on the hook, and now I'm just going to go to the next one. I'm going to just get through this whole season again, and there's a movie, I guess, after all this. That was like a TV thing.
Well, because they got canceled before they could finish, so they did a couple of movies to be the 5th season, essentially. The Peacekeeper Wars is what they're called. And yeah, I was looking up to jog my memory. So the arc becomes more about Crichton trying to figure out how to get back home, and less about the vengeance of the Peacekeepers. And the conflict with the Peacekeepers becomes them wanting to get a hold of the wormhole technology to use as weapons.
Gotcha. Okay. So we know where that plot goes. But I'm just excited to do it again. I just want to.
Here's something that I can't resolve because of what they do. It's a classic case where I think they wrote backwards and said, okay, they're not going to trust Crichton. He's a primitive. What does he have to do to win their approval to stay aboard?
Yeah.
Well, he could have a maneuver that they wouldn't think about to be able to get away from the Peacekeepers. Okay, so we are going to have him have a maneuver. Okay, that maneuver can be the reason that he was in the test plane or the test ship at the beginning. What's the maneuver got to be? Well, it's got to be something that makes him go fast. Oh, okay. We'll have his test ship be going super fast. Well, it's got to be super fast enough to impress aliens that are highly advanced. Okay, so it'll be using slingshot effect. Slingshot effect makes you go fast, right? Didn't they use that in Star Trek 4? We'll use that. Okay, great. And then accidentally he'll go through a wormhole. Won't really have anything to do with the slingshot effect, but we'll need the slingshot effect thing so he can impress him later. And in the end, the slingshot effect thing is dumb.
No, it is dumb.
The physics just, I mean, forget, if you're looking for physics, there's very little science in that part of the science fiction story. Is what I'm trying to say.
Does that get under your skin when science fiction decides not to go deep into actual theory or whatever, even if it's a far-flung result of thinking about that theory, but you'd like them to at least ground it in something like that? Is that more your
I am the kind of person who long ago decided I'm going to decide if something is worth forgiving to enjoy or not. And I'll either just stop watching it or I'll forgive stuff like that. So with Farscape, I was like, this is enjoyable. I'll pretend that he's just doing a test flight and forget this silly slingshot effect. But then they bring it back and rub it in my face because it's the whole reason that they accept him. Like, oh, wow, cool slingshot effect. That helped us get away. I'm like, I really just wish they would have come up with a different way for him to impress them.
Yeah.
Maybe with just some simple math. Like that's a trope that's used a lot where the primitive sees something that the others don't because they're overthinking it because they're too advanced, right? They could have done something like that and it would have worked just as well. And his test flight could have ended up exactly the same because the the wormhole opened up randomly.
Sure.
I mean, there's sort of an implication that because he was going so fast, it may have opened it, but you wouldn't have had to have that be the case, right? You could have just had it be a random thing and he got caught up in it, and then have some other way, because it's when he uses it to get away from the Peacekeepers that it bothers me. The first time I was willing to let pass.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that works for his character, for him to be scrappy and to say, you guys are all so quote unquote advanced, you're not seeing the simple solution. I like that idea. But I would have liked to have been not a more simple solution, but a solution that actually was plausible, that was maybe more tactile or tactical. It reminds me of
it would tie into Ben Browder's way of playing the character, right? Which is like, hey man, I'm just a simple caveman astronaut. You know, maybe I'm dumb, but couldn't you just push that button? And they're all like, wait, what? Could that work? I guess that could work. Okay, zoom. There we go. Yeah. Okay, we're out of it.
My idea, or my example of this being done well, is when the crew of the Millennium Falcon, under the scrappy idea of Han Solo, decided to attach itself to the back of the battlecruiser, and then when they let the trash go,
and just float away with the rest of it.
Yeah, they disconnect, and they're like, all right, they're not going to notice us because they are not scanning the trash. They think we're just part of the trash, and now we're going to get away. Like, that's one of those where I love that. And Star Wars certainly has more leeway because they can get pretty magical with their science. But even then, that's a very scrappy ground level idea.
And because of it, I'm willing to forgive the fact that there's no way he could have stopped in time to attach himself without them noticing, right?
Right.
Like, fine, I'll just be like, yeah, he's that good of a pilot. He figured it out.
Yeah.
Wave my hands, and then just the sheer genius of it gets to be the fun part.
You can forget the logistics a little bit.
Yeah,
because the idea itself is good enough. This one's just, And the other problem is, I mean, we're talking 99, which is, there's a fair amount of innovation happening, but not in your 4x3 television fare. This stuff was like 3D Studio Max 2.0 looking space stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Muppets actually get better. They look pretty good. They're a little janky in the pilot, but they're pretty good most of the run.
Right.
And I'm glad they did those instead of some kind of computer animation, which would have been really janky in 99.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you think, and I don't mean to, cast aspersions on an international effort like this, but doesn't it look like 93, not 99?
Yes. Yes. This pilot is in fact, I had to remind myself that this is not older than it is.
Yeah.
It definitely improved. I wish they'd have gone widescreen early in the 2000s like everybody else seemed to be doing.
Right.
But this whole transfer's 4x3 on Prime. Although the little movie
Season
thing
4, they went widescreen.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be a cool thing, like they did with Next Generation and X-Files and a few other shows that have all been, they went back to the original cuts and went widescreen with all of it because they have original film for it all. I would love it if they did it with this show because I think it deserves just a better treatment. But as a pilot, yeah, it feels a little old. It feels a little janky. It feels very experimental. Like, in some ways, I'm surprised they got it made. Like, having puppets as part of your thing is pretty hardcore of an idea in your
well, that's why
sci-fi.
you needed Henson Productions, not just Brian Henson, but the Jim Henson Company on board. To make this happen. Yeah.
And I want more of that. Like, generally speaking, at the time anyway, I was like, please have more practical effects stuff with puppetry. Mix it with digital if you want to, but as they were leaping into this digital space, I just always wanted that puppetry stuff to stay alive. I don't know what that new Dark Crystal series is going to be and how much of that's going to be augmented digitally or whatever, but I hope that they have a whole lot of dudes with their hands up the butt of puppets, because I just love it. It's an art form I love, and so seeing it here again and knowing how beloved Farscape is and knowing how well they pulled some of that stuff off, I got excited about puppets again. So, yeah.
Farscape, it'll get you excited about puppets again.
See? Put that on the box. You'll sell 1 trillion of them.
Yeah. I also have forgotten how just D&D this setup is, right? Like, I am a warrior. He is a thief. She is a priest. Welcome to our party, human.
It's like a little science fiction D&D campaign. Sure enough. And you're not the first person to mention that. I saw some stuff on Twitter where they're always like, yeah, it's like the best D&D group ever made. And they're not wrong. I mean, and it's also one of those D&D groups that kind of throws convention out the window a little bit and decides to go in strange directions. And, somebody wants to play their curmudgeonly little guy who's supposed to be a ruler of something, but instead acts like a Ferengi and floats around on his own little floater chair or whatever. Like that's some D&D for weirdos. It's great.
Nerd upon nerd.
Yeah, I like that quality of it.
Maybe that's what they could have done with Crichton, is have him roll a natural 20.
Oh, hey.
And then they would have been impressed.
That would have been, well, then he gets to hit with advantage and everybody wins.
And they would have been like, well, I guess we have to keep you on the crew now. You hit with advantage.
You got crit. I mean, that aside, and plot stuff with this first one aside, which did feel very much like, all right, hit all the points about how he's not from here, and let's get him into a new place, and it's all very shocking, blah, 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 blah. Get that out of the way. I now want to go on and at least remind myself, did they find their own thread? Is it outside of these tropes that they locked into on the first episode? Is it?
Yeah, because Claudia Black's character changes quite a bit,
yeah.
as I recall.
Yeah.
This almost didn't feel like I was watching Claudia Black. I feel like Ben Browder, I mean, they change his purpose. I guess not, though. They really hammer the I need to get home thing in this first episode, but he kind of gets distracted in avoiding the brother revenge a lot more.
Yeah.
I feel like in the first, but it's also a procedural, right? Like it's a serial where each episode has its own plot that that serves the overall arc. But that first season particularly, they kind of stay in that Star Trek mode of like, yeah, we've got an overall arc that we'll pay attention to every once in a while, but each episode kind of also stands alone.
Yeah, I think I'm ready for a bit of a return to that. I don't know if it's because of this good anthology style TV we've been getting lately or something, but I kind of miss the ideas of a villain a week. I know that the way bingeable shows go now, and we're in a different time of storytelling, but I do kind of miss even Star Trek Discovery. While they try to insert a little of that this last season, they still have to they have to live by the conventions of current world storytelling, which is one big arc.
I'm actually curious, without spoiling anything that happened at the end of season 2, there's sort of a new setup being pointed to for season 3, and maybe that'll give them that chance to do that.
Mm-hmm. That'd be great. I don't know why I want that again. I used to think that I was so happy we didn't have it anymore. Like shows like Lost and other stuff in the mid-aughts, BSG, they would come along and say, oh, hey, what if it was one giant story and we're just bits and pieces in that story? And yeah, some episodes stand alone as kind of whatever, but there was definitely a swing away from this. And I don't know, there's some value in this. This is the old way of doing it. Like back in the day, this was your radio dramas, your early TV dramas, your old movies. They were just so focused on what's happening right now to these people right now, then catch up with them next week. Even something like The Incredible Hulk, it was all about what town are you in? What horrible thing does David Banner have to deal with?
What adventure will he run into in this particular town?
Yeah.
That may be one of the reasons that I like Death in Paradise, because every episode is just a new mystery. And yes, that town on that island has a really high murder rate because of that. But it makes for good storytelling. Tales rightly points out Orville is another example. I think that's why people love Orville, because it is that same thing.
Yeah,
they have their monster of the week, but they also have some threads that connect stuff. I'd like to see more approaches to that to do it really well. I think what happened was we got the bingeable stuff and the DVR too, which allowed people to catch up. Because one of the reasons you didn't want to have too much serial was like, well, but then back before DVRs and even VCRs, if you missed it, you missed it, and it was hard to catch up. So I mean, that's one of the things that hurt Twin Peaks in the 90s is you had to record it on VCR, or else you were entirely lost unless somebody caught you up. And I think we benefited from the fact that, okay, now that we have DVRs, now that we have on demand, we can take more risks with serial storytelling, and Lost and others leaned into that, which is great. But now it's time to take all of those chops that people honed doing those serials and say, all right, let's see if we can make an even better version of this more procedural episodic situation. I mean, Orville does a great job about it, but Orville is also tipping its hat to the Star Treks of the 90s while it does it. I want to see somebody do a totally new version that's not an homage to anything.
Yeah, and I couldn't think of anything I'm watching right now that does that. I still can't. Like some comedies maybe. But even then they've got their through lines, and through lines are fine. I want through lines like
like Death in Paradise has through lines as well.
Sure, Picard's Borg problem was a through line for seasons, and you'd still have your episodes, but it was always this little thing about Locutus and how he's changed and thinks differently, and like I'm down with that. I just think that I miss it. Like Stargate's another good example of this. Fantastic show. Monster of the week kind of premise, a few through lines.
With the through line.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, honestly, I watched Stargate SG-1 before I got into Farscape. I didn't watch Farscape when it was on the air at first.
Oh, Claudia Black before Claudia Black was...
when Claudia Black came on SG-1 and everybody's like, oh my gosh, Ben Browder's on SG-1. And I was like, I got to get in the Farscape thing, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, of course, going back and watching the SG-1 episode where they do the movie...
Mm-hmm.
Did you remember that one?
Oh yeah, I love that one.
And you have Daniel Jackson playing Crichton.
Oh yeah,
instead of Ben Browder. It's genius.
It was good.
Allegedly, they wrote the script with Ben Browder playing Crichton in that fake movie for SG-1. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, they parodied Farscape in an episode of SG-1 because they were pretending to make a movie, and the actors actually lobbied them to be like, no, it'll be funnier if you have Daniel play Crichton, and Browder be kind of upset about it.
Yeah, no, it was genius. I mean, that's another show I hugely love for similar reasons, but I don't know why I feel this way, Tom, and maybe I'm jaded. I don't know what it is. But I do. There's something about the structure of this show, of TNG, of Babylon 5, of everything, SG1, or even Atlantis for that matter, that I miss. And so all of these that we're talking about, I'm having these happy feelings about, and realize that none of the shows I'm really into right now do this. And I think what I'm looking at is like there's a positivity. Like if you made Farscape today, I feel like all this stuff when he gets introduced to this crazy place with this crazy people would be more horrific and more.
Yeah.
They'd go for a darker edge and shakier cameras, and I don't know, maybe even I don't know. I don't know what they do, but it doesn't feel like they would be. It wouldn't have this optimistic, fun, swashbuckling. Let's go
with
across
the swashbuckling part, right? Because it's Khal Drogo. How do you say his name?
That's it. Carl. Let's call him Carl Drogerson up the street. We're gonna go. We have a barbecue there on Friday. It'd be great.
But the warrior guy, Anthony Simcoe's character,
yeah.
he at first you think is going to be a lot harder to deal with.
Yeah.
Than he is for John Crichton, and he ends up not being. His bark is worse than his bite. But you're right. If this was today, he would be like, "I'm going to kill you soon," like every day. Like, "Good night, Dread Pirate Roberts. You'll most likely kill me in the morning." That would be what was going on, and there'd be a lot more mystery to the priests, to Powell. I never could say their names. I don't know why.
Again, either to Pow,
not to Pow.
Oh, no, that is different.
Blue Lady.
Blue Lady.
She would be mysterious and unresponsive, and yeah, there wouldn't be any lights in the cockpit area where they try to control things. And you're right, it would just be so much darker.
And I don't know if I want many more of that. And I also know that that's contrary to what the market seems to want. Like even in Netflix's case, I noticed lately that they must know that everybody wants a lot of end of world movies and TV shows and cooking shows, and I mean they know the categories that are getting watched, right? So they're
if you're not remodeling your house or baking, you're destroying the earth.
Right. Now I'd love to see some crossovers there, but for now I understand why they do it, and I also have some appetite for it. I really liked Black Summer, which just came out on there.
You know, part of the reason though is I'm going to throw this out there and see if it sticks. Maybe part of the reason is we have this culture, and I'm guilty of it, I'm not exempting myself, of combing over everything, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what were the weaknesses in last week's Game of Thrones? What part didn't work for me? And so I think that forces not necessarily darkness, but less fun. Because fun has more of a chance of coming off as dumb or inconsistent, right? Like, again, Ka Dargo's anger, you could look at that and say, like, what a dumb character. He's supposed to be this fierce warrior, but he never does anything, right? If you're looking at it too closely. And yet, the cool part is that because he's a warrior who doesn't, actually try to kill John Crichton every week, you get a bit of camaraderie. Maybe it's cheaply bought, but that's what we're saying. Like, maybe we could come up with a more convincing way to create this camaraderie than we have, but still keep that fun liveliness without having to always be dark.
Yeah. Like we also don't have to, well, I mean, cinematography aside, I really like how Discovery looks, for example, but it's a very cinematic approach to what is otherwise a lot of, the captain sitting in a chair, talking to the comms menu thing, looking over at Riker for a second, looking back. Like, it's not a very dynamic film-like approach to making a TV show. And I feel like all of these things suffer from that a little bit. Although Farscape, I feel like, pushed that limit a little bit. BSG came and blew it out, and I don't think we've ever gone back. In fact, I think BSG is a huge responsible actor in all of this in changing the tone. I'm gonna just float this one out here. You tell me what you think. You give me a floater. I'm ready.
Isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe doing what we're talking about, just writ large and across years instead of in a season? It's fun.
Hadn't thought of that.
It's got camaraderie, but it's still serious.
Yeah.
It still has compelling situations and characters. They don't cheat.
Yeah.
But it's episodic, and each episode, read each movie, stands alone, but feeds the overall arc.
Okay, that's one way to look at it. I mean, also that's you could argue that the cinematic universe hasn't had to start getting serious until these last couple of entries.
Right.
I mean, and getting really serious, like dire consequence serious.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, well, yeah. But it's always had stakes, right?
Yeah.
Even as far back as Iron Man 1.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a good way of looking at it. So maybe that's why it works, and no one recognizes that. And of course, this is a film example, so it's harder to compare to TV. But I think as soon as we start getting things like The Mandalorian and other kinds of genre projects that everyone's looking forward to, they're generally more general audience and not aiming to be all edgy or whatever. That'll be fun to see how they do that. Like if that series can create that fun that Star Wars has always had, but then not try to just get too down all the time. Like if you told me today, if you said, "Hey Scott, I heard today that Farscape's being relaunched, rebooted, a whole new show, whole new cast, it's coming out, it's going to be awesome, FX is doing it, whatever," I would be immediately super stoked and excited. But then immediately I would go, "Oh, they're going to go gritty and dark and stuff with this thing where they didn't need to." And I hate feeling that way. I just wonder if there's a market for it, and it's just I'm just screwed because I'm only one of like 8 people who cares about this sort of thing. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't worry about it.
I do think that it will it always swings, right? We go from dark back to light, back to dark, back to light. And I can't begin to guess when we'll make the swing back, but I bet we do.
Yeah, I agree. Also, we've missed a real opportunity. I was just thinking about Jason Momoa because you were saying Khal Drogo, and we were making fun of the fact that it sounded like the Game of Thrones dude and all that. In the chat room they were. By the way, Khal Drogo is the current fun way to say his name. But
Khal Drogo.
We've missed a real opportunity because now he's too big and popular. He's freaking Aquaman. But there was a window there where you could have taken Jason Momoa and made him a Klingon or some sort of science fiction warrior dude, and he would have been amazing. So I'm just saying, keep your eyes out there, producers, and look for the right people because you missed out. I know he was in Stargate Atlantis, and that's where he got to start, and he's fantastic in that. But I'm telling you, he should have been some big, blade-carrying, long-haired, tentacle-headed looking nightmarish alien man, and you've blown it. Coming soon to Farscape 2019.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the premise of The Mandalorian, because when you mentioned that, I remember at Star Wars Experience, they talked about the fact that he's going to be taking a job. He's going to be hired by someone who because no one else can do the job. But I don't remember if they implied particularly if it meant that that's all we're getting, or if it will be each episode will be adventures he has along the way as he's trying to execute this job.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that. I mean, they've said so little, so it's probably going to be hard to find much info, but other than what they've let out now. But I'm
find a job, get paid, keep gunslinging.
Keep doing that.
That's The Mandalorian.
Back to the show here a little bit. After watching it, how do you feel? I mean, because I want to go watch it again. So how do you feel about it? Because I always like to see if I'm just up a creek, or maybe this is just a thing I have with Current Geek where I get excited and then I go rewatch the whole thing like I've done now 4 or 5 times. Do you have any interest in doing that with Farscape? You want to go back?
Yeah, you know what? More so than usual. And more so than the last time I watched this pilot. I watched this pilot. Shoot, I think I was still in the Bay Area when I watched it. I'm trying to remember. I always try to remember like what arrangement was my furniture in. That'll tell me what year it was. But yeah, I remember watching this and thinking it was kind of slow. I think this was when I was in the Bay Area, so it would have been more than 5 years ago. And this time I watched it, I was like, what am I talking about? This is great. This is a fun little story. And maybe it's that difference of more than 5 years ago, I was in the swing of like, yeah, this was nice for its time, but where's the realism? Show me the gritty universe of The Expanse. That's what I want, which also, by the way, I still want. Please bring back The Expanse to TV soon, Amazon. I can't wait any longer. At least I've got Time It's Wrath, the book, to hold me over. But anyway, I digress. This time I watched it, I was like, what was I thinking? This is fun. These are great characters. I'm in for a fun time, and I know it only gets better from here. So,
that's a good point. There are fleeting, interesting rumors, just rumors floating around that Farscape: The Next Generation or something to that effect is being worked on according to worldfusionwisdom.com.
Yeah,
now I agree with you. Total rumor.
It's got the stink of Firefly all over it.
It
right?
totally does.
They made a comic book miniseries back in 2008 in the continuity of the series because they couldn't get webisodes together. And then the last thing that was actually official was a screenplay for a movie back in 2014. But now that's 5 years ago. I just don't think.
You don't think it's going to happen? All right. I mean, let me tell you something. Ben Browder and what's her name? I forgot her name all of a sudden. Can't think of her name.
Claudia Black?
Claudia Black. Beautiful people in their middle age. Wonderfully handsome individuals.
Oh, you mean like now?
Now. So I'm just saying
you
can still
our age.
Yeah,
because
our
we
age.
are also beautiful people. All four of us are beautiful people.
Well, they're older than us by like 5-6 years, each of them, but they look amazing. Yeah. Amazing. So I'm just saying, there's no reason you couldn't tap the original two humanoids. Everybody else can wear makeup, and it won't matter how old they are. Except maybe Blue Lady. But you have an opportunity. I'm not a proponent of rumors. I don't ever believe anything until there's something substantiated. Even more so since I've met you. You're always like this little angel on my shoulder, who's going, Scott, that's just a rumor. Don't believe it. And you're almost always right. So I think about these things a lot more than I used to, and so I'm sure this isn't happening, but I can totally go for it.
Here's the weird thing. Okay, Rock the O'Bannon, Sequest was I guess Alien Nation maybe was his first big hit, and Sequest was a big hit. Then Farscape, Warehouse 13, he helped develop. I guess he didn't really work on that, but then Constantine he helped with, and Defiance was his last big one. Defiance went off the air in 2015. It's 4 years later, Rockney,
Yeah, what are you doing?
It's about time for him to resurface with a new project or sell his house in Studio City or wherever he lives.
Exactly. I didn't know he was a Sequest guy, though. That surprises me.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't know that, but Sequest was an interesting idea.
He was the creator. You should listen to the show Autopilot that used to be a podcast. These two guys talk about Sequest and that.
No, I remember us doing the episode, but I don't remember. Like the connection was never there for me that these are the same creators. That's
same Rockney O'Bannon. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, he ought to go make more things. Also, Alien Nation is awesome, and that really is getting something.
We've done that. We've done a lot of Rockney S. O'Bannon for Autopilot, actually.
And I heard again. Let's see. I don't want to say this unless I'm sure about it. Yes, Alien Nation is getting a new sci-fi show on Sci-Fi. So
but is he involved in it?
Probably
not.
not.
In it, then my hopes die for Farscape.
Probably not, because
that means that's what he was working on.
Exactly, but he's not on any of the credits yet, and he's not shown in his Wikipedia as working on it. So maybe he's not, and still has time for Farscape. But man, I love the concept of Alien Nation. I mean, it's also why I give a pass to that Will Smith Netflix movie, Bright, because it's different. Obviously, it's not aliens, but this idea of modern day human cop having to work with this orc cop, and the world's full of fairies and elves and all this, but we're in a modern setting, is fascinating to me. I think it's a wonderful place to write a story and to create a world. So I give that movie a big pass because I don't think it's a very good movie, but I love everything it's trying to do.
Since you bring up Will Smith, the movie Gemini has Will Smith de-aged to play a younger clone of himself.
Whoa.
And that makes me think, well, shoot, you could bring people back on. I mean, that's budgetary. I know that's movie level stuff right now, but maybe in a couple of years it gets cheap enough and suddenly you can de-age some folks on Farscape or anything. Firefly, whatever.
What's it called? Gemini? Oh, Gemini Man. Here it is. Oh, this is an Ang Lee movie. I was wondering where he'd been. That's great. Okay, I hadn't heard of this. You've introduced me to a new thing, so I will be looking at that trailer when we're done today. Because here's what happens, Tom. That technology that makes Michael Douglas look young and Ant-Man or whatever, that's going to get cheaper and cheaper and faster to the point that we're doing it with apps on our phones. But somewhere in the middle of that time frame, it'll be cheaper to do in movies, and we can bring back entire casts with the original actors de-aged, so it looks like Mal and the Firefly crew just got off the boat. Maybe everybody but Wash.
Dirty Dancing 2. Wait, 3.
Wait, but some of those people are dead though. I don't think we can bring them back, or maybe we can.
Yeah. Okay. So when does it get good enough to let someone else be de-aged into another actor? Yeah.
I mean, if let's say that's a real question, and I'm going to answer it, I will say that if you are, I was just noticing the other day that Gene Hackman is almost 90. He's 89. He hasn't worked for a while. I think his last movie was 04 or something. So he's not doing anything anyway. But Gene Hackman being almost 90, I think that's way past the limit. I think you want to be about 70. Because what happens is at 70, right before 70, you can still sound and move and be like that dude. At 70 and on, you're slowing down, you're hunching over, you're not the same. But you're also possibly going to have a great late career bump because you're going to be a great character actor in some cool roles, and people are like, oh my gosh, can you believe that was Andy Griffith?
No, what I was asking is when can you use a younger body and de-age them into someone else? In other words, you're not de-aging them anymore, you're just masking them and saying, okay, now you're Michelle, even though Michelle Pfeiffer's still alive.
That's a weird question. Why does that
like when is the tech good enough? It's like it really doesn't matter if it's actually them.
Why does that feel unethical?
You can do their voice too now. That's the key, right?
Yeah, you'd modulate their voice. That feels weirdly unethical, and I don't know why. Why would it?
Well, it's unethical to do with a living actor for sure.
Yeah.
It's unethical to do with a dead actor without maybe the family or the estate's approval. But if everybody's on board, is it still unethical?
I guess not. I mean, maybe even your movie has the younger person playing the actor who's still alive, and in it, like they're the old lady at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle of the movie, it's a body double with a voice modulator to look and sound just like they would have at 30.
Oh dear, there was a Dirty Dancing 3, so 4.
Was there really?
Yeah, Dirty Dancing 3, Capoeira Nights.
Oh my gosh. Wait, Capoeira, that's that dance the Brazilians do, that cool thing where they kick around.
Camellia Bell, Jesse Williams, and David Hunt.
That's hilarious.
As directed by Jake Shemansky.
Hilarious. That is the great revelation of today's episode. There is a really. Dirty Dancing 3. Honestly, I forgot there was a 2. So there are 2 Dirty Dancing movies I've never seen.
I almost forgot there was a 2. Then I was like, wait, Havana. Don't forget the Havana.
Oh, Havana. Yeah, the Havana part. Yeah. Wonder how they even got in there. They probably didn't. They probably filmed it in California.
No,
anyway.
They filmed in Florida, probably.
Yeah, who knows? All right, well, this has been enlightening to be certain.
We've learned so much about ourselves and Dirty Dancing. So.
I am going to watch more. I'm totally going to do this. I'm going to watch more Farscape and get into it, and they're all there for the taking on Amazon Prime. If you're a Prime Video subscriber and have Amazon Prime, then you have it in its entirety, including the film. The 2-hour film is on there as well. I don't know what the quality of any of that is, but definitely a place to catch it all. Somebody in the chat says the Blu-rays are widescreen. So maybe if you have that.
They didn't shoot the first 3 seasons in the wide aspect ratio, so if they're widescreen, they're probably cropped.
Well, did they do
actually worse than just showing me the original 4:3?
I totally agree with that. But like in TNG's case, those were, I guess they were filmed in wide film. It was actual film, 35 millimeter film, and then no cropping because they had the original negatives, I guess.
Unless this information I have is wrong, but it's telling me seasons 1 through 3 were not white.
Maybe they only mean 4. Yeah, I don't want crop. Crop is no good.
No, do not crop.
Crop is no good.
Crop is crop.
That's a crappy job you did there. All right. All right. That's going to do it for today's show. Now, like we said, next month, or no, we didn't say this because we decided it before the show. Next month, our autopilot episode is going to be finally the greatest American hero.
Look at what's happened to us.
Look at what's happened to me.
And I don't know if the pilot was retroactively edited, but I remember as a kid, I watched this from the beginning because they marketed the crap out of it. And I remember them calling him Mr. Hinckley until John Hinckley attempted to assassinate the president, and then he became Mr. H. So I don't know if the pilot episode will still be calling him Mr. Hinckley or if they went back and dubbed it out.
No, it was like Preparation H. It used to be Preparation Hinckley.
Until the assassination of your problem.
And then the 4-H club used to be the 4 Hinckley club. I mean, I know these things.
Oh, yeah. What the H used to be what the Hinckley.
Yeah. When people say, When they say you're on the H, they're not talking about heroin. They're talking about you're on the Hinckley.
No,
Yeah.
you're on the Hinckley.
Yeah. Don't be putting Hinckley in your veins. All right. So that's next month, The Greatest American Hero. And after this, right after we're done speaking, that is, stick around because Legal Geek is here to revisit the comics lawsuit between Comicsgate leader Richard Meyer and DC Marvel writer Mark Waid, and explains why the discovery process has revealed facts that have totally flipped the initial analysis from our good friend Legal Geek. So check it out if you're following that case at all and want to find out more. It is the legal version of our nerdiness happening right after this. Before all that, though, Tom Merritt, anything going on right now that you'd like to let people know about?
Well, I'll be hanging out with you, my friend Scott Johnson and Brian Ibbett this weekend in the Vegas.
Yep.
Or as they say in Spanish, Las Vegas.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
I am looking forward to that. So it's vivatmsvegas.com.
That is correct. vivatmsvegas.com. And if you don't know about it and you are going to be in Vegas for some reason, there's stuff you could even go to, but I am very much looking forward to seeing you and everybody there. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So come join us if you can. And that and other things are mentioned in my weekly newsletter. If you're like, wait, why didn't I know about this? Well, because you didn't subscribe to freetomnewsletter.com. Go subscribe to it right now and keep up to date with everything I do. Well, okay, not everything. Like my blood test, I probably won't be putting in there, but like the podcasts and writing and books, all that stuff goes in. Again, it's freetomnewsletter.com.
You really just have a blood test? I did too the other day.
Yeah, I had one this morning.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh, it was like 2 days ago for me. And everything came back great except one. I'm a little low on the testosterone.
Oh, well, you just need to eat more meatballs.
I don't want to know why, but sure. I'm going to do that. I'm going to eat more balls. Hey, but we'll be in Vegas. It's going to be great. We'll get lots of pictures. We'll share them out. And I want to thank you all for listening. Don't forget CurrentGeek.com is our website. You can go there, support us at CurrentGeek on the Patreon, patreon.com/CurrentGeek. That's also linked on the website. And send us your emails, currentgeek@gmail.com. It's going to do it for us, for me, for Tom, for all of you. We'll see you next time. Yeah.
They're TMS tomorrow?